Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a mental model that top strategists use all the time, the domino effect. And this is about so much more than just cause and effect. It's really about learning to see the future, just by understanding how one tiny push can change, well, everything. What if a single choice you make today could kick off a chain of events that completely rewrites your career, your business, or maybe even a little piece of history? So where does this power really come from? It all starts with getting a handle on what's actually happening when that very first domino starts to tip over. At its heart, the domino effect is a cascade. A single, sometimes really small, action triggers the sequence of related events. And you gotta think about it. The first domino doesn't just fall into a void, it literally transfers its energy to the next one, which then pushes the next one, creating this powerful and sometimes totally unstoppable chain reaction. And look, this isn't just a cool metaphor. It's a seriously powerful mental model. Once you learn to see the world this way, you start spotting these hidden connections, you start anticipating outcomes that, frankly, most people just never see coming. It's a real upgrade to your strategic brain. To see this model in action on a truly global scale, we just have to look back at the Cold War. This is where the fear of a single domino falling quite literally shaped the world that we all live in today. During the Cold War, this idea became something much bigger. It was called the domino theory, and it was a cornerstone of Western foreign policy. The core belief was terrifyingly simple. If just one nation fell to communism, it was believed it would set off a chain reaction, toppling its neighbors one by one. I mean, this was not some academic debate. It was the justification for huge political and military interventions all across the globe. And this right here, this was the exact chain reaction that policymakers were terrified of. They saw a potential fall in a place like Korea or Vietnam, not as some isolated event, but as the first domino. In their minds, it would inevitably lead to Laos falling, and then Cambodia, until the entire region was just gone. That perceived certainty drove decades of foreign policy, all based on a strategy of containment, no matter what it cost. Okay, so that's history on a massive scale, but let's bring this down to earth. How can you use this exact same way of thinking to make better decisions and really get ahead in your own life, in your own work? Well, the answer lies in a super practical framework. Think of this next part as your own personal playbook for mastering the domino effect, a clear step-by-step process that helps you anticipate and even shape what happens next. This is how you turn the idea into a real tool. Okay, step 1, map it out. Just identify every potential domino in the sequence. What happens first, then what, then what. Step 2, assign probabilities. Now this is so crucial. How likely is each domino to actually fall? Is it a 90% shot or a 10% shot? Because that changes everything. Step 3, evaluate. Look at the end of that chain. Is that an outcome you actually want? If the answer is no, you move to step 4, strategize. Where is the single best place to step in, either to stop the chain or maybe even to start a positive one? And finally, step 5, test it. Stress test your own logic. Ask yourself, what if I'm totally wrong about this? That's how you uncover your blind spots. But here is a critical warning. Like any powerful tool, this model can be dangerous. If you're not careful, it doesn't lead you to clarity. It can lead you straight into some major intellectual traps. And here's the biggest trap of all. We tend to invoke the domino effect way more often than it's actually justified. Our brains are just wired to see patterns, and we often mistake a simple sequence of events for a direct consequence. We start seeing these causal chains everywhere, even when, in reality, there's nothing there. This brings us to a really critical distinction you have to make. On one hand, you have a true domino effect. That describes a proven causal chain. A causes B, which then causes C. But then you have its evil twin, the slippery slope fallacy. And that's the flawed, lazy assumption that A will inevitably lead to some catastrophic Z way down the line, usually with huge logical leaps in between. One is based on evidence, the other is almost always based on fear. And you see this flawed thinking all over the place. From things like the broken windows theory in policing, all the way to the infamous gateway drug theory. You know the argument that using one drug inevitably leads to using harder ones. That is a perfect example. It confuses correlation with causation. You have to remember, just because B happened after A doesn't mean A caused B.
So how do we actually use this model effectively and still avoid all those traps? Well, the key is to level up your thinking. You have to learn to see beyond just the first domino and start thinking in entire chains of consequences. And this right here is the difference between first order and second order thinking. First order thinking is simple. It goes like this. Problem, there are too many cobras in the city. Solution, we'll offer a reward for dead cobras. Simple, right? But second order thinking asks the magic question, and then what happens? In the real story from British Delhi, what happened was that people started breeding cobras just to turn them in for the bounty. The problem got so much worse. That is the kind of strategic disaster that first-order thinking leads to. The number 2, it really represents that jump, the leap from being an amateur to being a strategist. Because the key to unlocking this deeper level of thinking is forcing yourself to ask one simple question about any action you take. And then what? That question right there is the bridge from the first consequence to the second, and it's what reveals the entire chain. Okay, so let's boil this all down into your new strategic toolkit. First, just know that every action can trigger a chain. Second, use that 5-step playbook to map it out. Third, you got to be ruthless in telling the difference between a real cause and just a correlation. Fourth, watch out for that slippery slope fallacy. It's usually an argument from fear, not from facts. And finally, the master rule, the big one. Always, always think about the consequences of the consequences. That is where the real insight lives. So we'll leave you with this one final crucial question. I want you to look at your world, your career, your goals, your life. What is the single most important domino sitting in front of you right now? Is it one you need to push to start an amazing cascade of success? Or is it one you need to pull out of the line before it topples everything else? The first and most important step is just seeing it clearly. Let us know what you're thinking below. Thanks for thinking with us on The Explainer.